The wind screamed like a wounded beast across the empty plains of Arizona, its voice carrying the dust and sorrow of forgotten years. The Wilkins Ranch stood alone under a dying sky, where streaks of crimson and gold stretched like torn silk across the horizon. The sun was bleeding out over the jagged mesas, and the last warmth of the day flickered across the rusted fence posts and dry wells that had not seen water in a decade. Clara stumbled toward the ranch, her thin frame trembling from exhaustion. Her shawl, once white, was now a dull brown, caked with dust and fear. Her boots left faint prints in the sand that vanished seconds later beneath the restless wind. She had been walking since dawn, with nothing but the memory of fire behind her and the whisper of hope ahead. Her heart pounded with every step, her breath ragged as she finally reached the gate. It creaked like an old soul sighing as she pushed it open. There, by the barn, stood a man, tall, motionless, and wrapped in a brown duster that fluttered in the storm's breath. His shadow stretched long over the cracked earth, and his hat hid most of his face except for a pair of glinting eyes that caught the last light like steel. He didn't move as she approached, he just watched her, silent, unreadable. For a moment, Clara wondered if he was even real, or just another ghost this land refused to bury. When she finally stopped a few paces away, he spoke, his voice low and rough as gravel. "You shouldn't be here," he said, the words slow, heavy, like they carried history. Then, softer, "Get inside, before it's too late." The sky grumbled above them, thunder rolling across the valley like cannon fire. Clara hesitated, fear freezing her in place, but something about his tone, the strange blend of warning and care, made her obey. She crossed the porch, her hand brushing against the splintered railing, and for the first time since morning, she felt a strange sense of being seen. Behind her, the wind howled through the canyons, as if the land itself wanted to swallow her whole. Inside that old ranch house, fate was waiting, patient, silent, and watching. The door groaned open, releasing a breath of stale air mixed with candle smoke and old wood. Inside, the ranch house was dim and heavy, every corner soaked in the amber light of flickering candles. Shadows stretched and twisted along the walls, painting strange shapes that almost moved when no one was looking. Clara's hands trembled as she stepped over the threshold. The floorboards moaned beneath her weight, complaining after years of solitude. Ethan, that was the name he gave her, walked ahead, slow and deliberate, like a man guiding someone through a place of ghosts. He poured her coffee in a chipped mug, its handle cracked but still holding. "Storm's gettin' worse," he muttered, glancing at the window where the lightning painted white scars across the sky. She nodded, clutching the mug like it was the only warm thing left in her world. Her eyes wandered to the walls. Dusty portraits hung in crooked frames, one of a woman with soft eyes and a faint smile, another of Ethan standing beside a horse, his hand on the holster of a revolver, his shirt sleeve stained dark, maybe with blood, maybe with time. Clara tried not to stare, but something about that woman's face made her heart skip. There was a resemblance, faint, impossible, yet undeniable. Ethan noticed her staring. "She was my wife," he said flatly, not waiting for a question. His tone held no pain, no nostalgia, just the dull weight of something buried deep. "Been gone a long while now." The storm cracked outside, thunder rolling over the desert like an angry god. "You're safe here," he said finally, his gaze resting on her in a way that felt both protective and piercing. But the way he said it made her uneasy, too calm, too final. Like a man who'd said the same words before, and watched them crumble into tragedy. When the clock struck midnight, Clara found herself staring into the fire, her thoughts circling the same questions. Who was this man? Why did the air around him feel so heavy, as if carrying sins unspoken? She wanted to believe she had found shelter, but deep down, she knew she had only stepped into the eye of a storm much older than the one raging outside. The rain began just after midnight, thick, relentless sheets pounding against the roof like drumming fingers of fate. Clara couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes, the woman in the portrait, the blood on Ethan's sleeve, the hollow sound of his voice. Then, somewhere beneath the roar of the storm, she heard it, footsteps. Slow, measured, coming from the barn. She sat up, her heart hammering. The sound didn't belong to the wind. It was too deliberate, too human. Wrapping herself in a blanket, she tiptoed down the hallway. The oil lamp flickered on the table, its light trembling as if afraid. She pressed her hand against the cold glass of the window, and there he was. Ethan, moving through the rain, dragging something heavy across the mud. It was wrapped in canvas, thick and dark, leaving a trail that glistened faintly red under the lightning's flash. Her breath caught. For a moment, she wanted to scream, but fear sealed her throat. The storm swallowed Ethan's figure as he disappeared into the barn. Curiosity, cruel and sharp, overpowered her fear. She slipped on her boots, threw the blanket over her shoulders, and stepped out into the storm. The rain soaked her instantly, the cold biting into her bones. She pushed the barn door, it creaked open with a mournful sound. Inside, the smell of hay mixed with something metallic, bitter, old blood. Her trembling eyes scanned the shadows. Tools hung from the beams, a lantern swung in the wind, and beneath it, a trunk. Large, iron-bound, smeared with fresh mud. She stepped closer, her heartbeat drumming in her ears. The lock was new. The edges were damp. And from inside came a sound, faint, soft, like breathing. She stumbled back, her hand over her mouth, as lightning flooded the barn in white light. When darkness returned, the sound was gone. Only silence remained. Clara turned and ran back to the house, her mind screaming one question she dared not say aloud: what is Ethan hiding in that trunk? When morning broke, it came not with calm, but with the echo of hooves. Clara woke to the sound of riders, fast, many, their yells cutting through the valley air like knives. Ethan was already standing by the window, his rifle leaning against the wall, his jaw set tight. His eyes met hers, cold and sharp. "You were in the barn," he said, his voice flat but heavy, like a sentence already past. Clara froze, every word caught in her throat. I just heard something," she began, but he cut her off. "You shouldn't have opened that door." The silence that followed was unbearable. The only sound was the ticking of the old clock, steady as a heartbeat. Then, in a voice that was almost too calm, Ethan said, "What you saw, it wasn't what you think. But now it's too late to walk away." She stared at him, her voice trembling. "What's in that trunk, Ethan?" His face softened for the first time, sorrow flickering in his eyes. "My past," he said quietly. "And maybe yours too." Her mind raced. His past. Her past. What could that mean? But before she could speak again, the thunder of hooves grew louder. Dust rose outside the windows, and the sharp ring of metal echoed, guns being drawn. Ethan grabbed his rifle, loaded it with a practiced hand, and glanced back at her. "If they find you here, they'll kill us both." The riders came into view, 5 of them, dressed in black dusters, their faces hidden behind scarves. One carried a red flag marked with a strange symbol, a broken horseshoe and a star. Clara stepped toward the window and felt her blood turn cold. The man leading them, the one with the scar across his cheek, she knew that face. He was the sheriff from Dry Hollow, the same man who had burned her father's home, who had chased her across the desert. Her voice cracked. "Ethan, they're not here for you. They're here for me." Ethan's face darkened. "Then we stand together." He chambered around and took position by the door. Clara could barely breathe. The walls felt like they were closing in. She wanted to run, but something in his eyes, the quiet conviction of a man who had already lost everything, made her stay. As the riders dismounted, the air filled with the metallic sound of spurs and thunder. The past had finally caught up with both of them, and there was no turning back. The gunfire started before sunrise. The first shot shattered the window beside Ethan, spraying splinters across the room. He dropped behind the table, returning fire through the cracks in the shutters. The roar of bullets filled the cabin, the sound mixing with the wind's howl until it was impossible to tell where the storm ended and death began. Clara ducked behind the fireplace, her ears ringing, her heart slamming against her ribs. She could see Ethan in the doorway, calm, steady, his rifle cracking again and again with deadly precision. Outside, the riders spread across the yard, their forms flickering through the storm like phantoms. One fell, another screamed. But for every man Ethan brought down, 2 more came forward. The air smelled of gunpowder and rain. Clara crawled to the corner, searching for anything she could use. Her hand brushed against the old trunk. The lock was broken now, the lid slightly open. For a moment, the world fell silent. Inside lay a faded photograph of Ethan, the woman from the portrait, and a child with eyes exactly like hers. Her breath caught. The truth hit her harder than any bullet. That child, it was her. The past she had fled wasn't chasing her, it had been waiting for her. She turned to Ethan, tears burning her eyes. You knew, she whispered. He didn't look back, just kept firing. I knew, he said. And I swore they'd never find you again. The door exploded in a hail of bullets. Ethan stumbled, clutching his side, blood seeping through his coat. Clara screamed and ran to him, grabbing the rifle from his hand. He looked up at her, his voice breaking between breaths. You run, don't stop. You carry her name, your mother's, and you don't look back. But Clara shook her head, tears mixing with rain. Not this time. She turned, aimed, and fired into the storm. The battle was chaos, mud, thunder, and fire. When it was over, silence swallowed the world. The rain eased. The wind carried the smell of smoke and blood across the valley. Ethan lay still, his head rolling across the wooden floor. Clara dropped beside him, clutching his hand. Why did you save me? She asked through tears. His lips trembled into a faint smile. Because I couldn't save her. As dawn rose over the desert, Clara stood alone by the grave she dug beneath the old oak tree. The earth was wet, the sky a pale gold. She pressed the photograph into the soil and whispered, "Rest now." The wind swept across the land, carrying with it the faintest echo of two names, one lost, one forgiven. And somewhere beyond the hills, a new sun began to rise, marking the end of one story, and the beginning of another. If you felt the sting of the desert wind and the weight of Clara's secret, don't ride away just yet. Every corner of the Old West hides another story buried in dust and blood. And here at Wild West Tales, those ghosts still speak. Subscribe and saddle up for the next ride, where redemption, revenge, and haunting love meet under the crimson sky. Every week, a new secret rises from the frontier. Will you be there when it's told?